Hi guys, welcome to another week in U.S. geography. We're actually closing down on the marking period here pretty soon, so I think we're on our second to last unit that we're going to be working with U.S. geography. Just a couple of housekeeping sorts of things. Some of you are still missing some things from prior units, either your South Central unit or your Midwest unit. So if you're missing those assignments like your maps or your quizzes, on Edmodo, please make sure you're getting those done, or feel free to email me, or Zoom call me, or give me a call on my school phone. Any of those things, I want to make sure that we're all caught up. Our unit for this week, we're going to be talking specifically about the Mountain West region of the United States. So without further ado, here we go. So this region includes several states, and I'll go ahead and give you the postal abbreviations like I always do. If you find I'm going through this a little too quickly for you, just make sure that you're pausing and going back so you can take a look at some different things and make sure you can catch up with your writing, because it is important that you guys open up a new Google Doc and take these notes. So states in this region include Montana, which is MT, Idaho, ID, Wyoming, WY, Colorado, CO, Utah, UT, Nevada, NV, and Arizona, AZ. States in this region border both nations of Mexico and Canada. This is the first region that we've talked about that does this. So this is a region that spans north and south in quite a large way, really. This region also includes the Great Salt Lake in Utah, which is the largest saltwater lake in the entire world. Obviously, typically you only find saltwater in oceans, and so the Great Salt Lake is one of the few exceptions in the world where we actually see non-fresh water in a lake. So kind of a neat thing there, a very unique part of the United States in our geography. Also, the biggest mountain region in the United States, the Rocky Mountains, is part of this Mountain West region. That's why it's called the Mountain West, because of the Rocky Mountains. And again, the Rockies, as you'll be labeling in your maps later this week, they go right directly through this region. Let's talk about the major cities of the Mountain West. Some of the bigger ones include Phoenix, which is in Arizona, Denver in Colorado, Salt Lake City in Utah, Las Vegas, Nevada, Boise, Idaho, Billings, which is in Montana, and Cheyenne, the biggest city in Wyoming. Biggest city of the entire region is going to be Phoenix, Arizona. Las Vegas is probably one of the more, if not the most famous city in this region, known as Sin City because of all its different casinos. You may have heard of some big ones like Bally's or Little Caesars, places like that. You've probably seen them on some Hollywood movies before. So Vegas is definitely a place that a lot of Americans have been to, or that a lot of Americans have heard of, just because of how unique it is. It's basically this city. I've been there 3 times myself for some different coaching conferences that I attended when I was younger. And the city itself is literally, you're going through the desert, nothing, and then this giant city of lights kind of bursts out, and it really is one of the bigger cities in the Mountain West region. Denver, Colorado, known as the Mile High City because of its extremely high elevation. It's one of the more, highly elevated, in other words, up the mountain cities that we have in the United States. So definitely quite a ways above seawater. The little pictures here, you can see this is kind of the fabulous Las Vegas sign, which is quite a famous sign, and then the Phoenix Coyotes, which are a hockey team in Arizona. And I haven't been to Arizona enough to know, but I would imagine they're probably Coyotes if they're naming their professional hockey team in Phoenix as the Coyotes. The climate of the region. It really depends on if you're in the northern part of the region or the southern part of the region, because you're going to see a major difference in the climate of both of those places. Northern part of the region is going to be very cold. We're talking about Montana and the Wyoming area. Obviously, some of those places are as far north as Michigan, or even farther north than Michigan, and so they're going to have those very cold winters along with mild summers. It doesn't mean that it won't get hot there in the summer. It does, but you're not going to see, ridiculously high, 100 degrees every day, those sorts of temperatures in the summer. And you are going to see some pretty cold winters with lots of snow in the northern parts of the Mountain West. Southern part of the region, the weather is very, very hot in the summer and still quite warm in the wintertime. Specifically, as we look at Arizona, Arizona is one of the warmest states in the United States, and that's year round. In the summertime, we're talking, north of 100, meaning it's higher than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, for most of the summer, I would say, or at least most of the days in the summer. Even in the wintertime, you're talking about, 65, 70, 75-degree temperatures. Major League Baseball does their spring training in both Florida and Arizona, and the reason for that is when they go to their spring training in February and March, we can't play baseball here very efficiently in February and March in Michigan or some of the northern states. So Arizona and Florida, those are types of states, and specifically talking about Arizona for this unit, where the climate is a lot more conducive to doing things like playing baseball or, just in general, a nicer climate. So something to be aware of, especially for those more southern parts of the Mountain West region. Rocky Mountains are going to have a tremendous impact on what the climate and the weather looks like in this region. Obviously, snowstorms. We know living in Michigan that the Lake Michigan or lake effect snow that we can get next to the lakeshore and the type of impact that can have. In the Mountain West, it's true, but the mountains affect that as well in terms of how the clouds come through and just different things with snowstorms or just the climate of the region. So just have an understanding that, again, that mountain part of the Rocky Mountains in the Mountain West region definitely plays a factor on the weather and the climate. Southern part of this region, specifically areas of Nevada, Arizona, even Utah, is covered by lots and lots of desert. So this is a very diverse region in terms of what does it look like. Yes, there's some mountains, but there's also, some pretty wide open areas, some desert, things like that. And so this is a very unique looking region, especially since it spans such a large area of our country from north to south or south to north. Little history for you about this Mountain West region. In 1936, the Hoover Dam was completed in Nevada. This helps provide hydroelectricity. So in other words, they use the water power from the Hoover Dam, which is part of the Colorado River, to create electricity for the region. It basically spins things and creates electricity that way. And it's named after former President Herbert Hoover. Nevada, the only state in the United States to allow casinos to be owned by non-Native Americans. That's statewide. We're starting to see it some more in some other states, so the laws on this actually may be changing, but it was definitely the first state anyway in the United States that allowed casinos basically to be throughout the state, and that's just kind of Nevada state law, and it's a huge part of Nevada's tourism. Lots of people go to Reno, Nevada, or even more specifically to Las Vegas, Nevada, to be part of this casino culture or to experience these big cities and the bright lights and the shows that go with them. So just understand that Nevada is a big, big area in terms of tourism, especially for people who like to go to casinos, people who like gambling or, those types of entertainment. So definitely a big deal right there. In 1999, this was something when I was growing up, I was a little bit older than you guys. One of the scarier moments of me growing up in terms of news coverage anyway was in Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. It was the location of one of the biggest school shootings in United States history. Two individuals who went to Columbine High School, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, shot and killed 13 of their classmates and staff members of the high school and wounded another 23. I can tell you, prior to the attacks on Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, there was no such thing at Central Montcalm as a lockdown drill. And I remember very distinctly the year after this happened, or maybe even during the year that it happened, we began practicing lockdown drills and what do we do in those sorts of situations. So although this was a very tragic event happening in the Mountain West region, specifically in Colorado, in some ways, because of that, there were some positive things that came about. to get schools more ready for lockdown procedures. And as you know, you've seen even in your time at school, in your school career, what we do and the safety that we have here at Central Montcalm and schools really throughout the country, is in large part a reaction to kind of what happened there. So just something to be aware of. Salt Lake City in Utah, again, one of the biggest cities of the region, actually hosted the 2002 Winter Olympics. So the most recent Olympics to be hosted in the United States was in Salt Lake City back in 2002, which, by the way, that was the year I graduated high school. Makes me feel old, I know. None of you were born yet. Feeling old. Culture of the region. Many members of the Mormon faith live in Utah. The Mormon religion, I should say, has some beliefs that are similar to Christianity and other beliefs that are different. So Mormons, I don't want to say necessarily, I know it says here they're a branch off from Christianity. They are, like I said, there are some beliefs that are similar. There are some beliefs that are different in terms of their religion. And one of the bigger differences is Mormons believe in what's called polygamy, which means you should be able to have more than one spouse. So for me, that would mean I could have more than one wife, or someone else could have more than one husband, or whatever the case may be. So that is one of the beliefs in Mormonism. Lots of different people live in the state of Utah that are Mormons. Some of them live there, or I should say originally moved there as Mormons to get away from, religious persecution. In other words, being treated unfairly because of their religion. So still to this day, because so many Mormons move to the Utah area to seek that freedom and to seek, being treated better, we still have lots of Mormons in those areas. Many Native Americans also live in the southwestern part of this region. It just happened to be a place where many Native Americans settled, especially after things that we'll talk about in U.S. history class, like the Indian Removal Act. And so lots and lots of people in this region have Native American heritage. Because this region doesn't have a lot of water, it doesn't mean that they don't have water, but obviously this isn't a region that you're going to see surrounded by big oceans or lots and lots of major rivers in the United States. There are often times people are encouraged not to use a lot of water. I remember, like I said, I've been to Las Vegas a few times. There are little signs in the hotels in Las Vegas of please consider, not having your towels washed every single day, or not having your bed sheets washed every single day if you're going to be staying for multiple days. That doesn't mean that they want people to not be clean or to not use water. It just means we're going to conserve it. Let's not just willy-nilly use all the water we can. That's a little bit odd for us in the state of Michigan because with all of our Great Lakes, all of our fresh water that we have in our state, we don't tend to worry about those things. So definitely a cultural difference of the Midwest versus the Mountain West here, especially the desert parts of this region. Second to last slide, some interesting facts and just different places that we'll talk about for this region. Yellowstone National Park, which you're going to be doing an assignment on later this unit toward the end of this week, is located in this region. It is the first national park in the United States, and in my humble opinion, one of the best ones as well. This is a place my parents took me and my brother when I was in high school. We saw all sorts of different parts of nature, all sorts of different animals, and it was really a pretty cool thing. I would encourage you to go to Yellowstone if you have a chance, but you're going to be learning a lot more about it in this unit with the assignment that you'll be doing later on. Speed limit in parts of Montana, and this always shocks kids. Here in the state of Michigan, I believe it's 75 is the highest you see on some of our expressways. A lot of times on main roads or main highways that aren't expressways, you'll see 55 or 50 miles an hour is the speed limit. But in Montana, in different places, because it's such a desolate area, meaning there's not a large population. Now, Montana, make no mistake, is a huge state in terms of geographic size, which you'll see when you're filling out your maps and then, taking pictures of that and then emailing it to me. But Montana is a huge state in terms of geographic size, but not in terms of population. So the speed limit in Montana, at least in parts of it, is what we call reasonable and prudent. What does that mean? It means there's no technical speed limit. Just whatever's reasonable, whatever that means. Prudent, meaning it's okay based on the conditions. So kids always ask, 70? Probably. 80? Maybe. 90? You're stretching it quite a bit if you're thinking there. Basically, if you could prove to a police officer that you were going a reasonable amount of speed, and prudent speed, meaning based on the conditions. So it's not nighttime out, or it's not raining or snowing, and the roads are clear. To a degree, you might be able to make that argument. I am not encouraging any of you to go out to Montana and floor it and just see what happens with the police officers there. That's not a good way to go. But it's kind of a neat thing in Montana, and definitely leads a lot of wiggle room for potential arguments with people in speeding tickets. So I don't know how all that works in Montana, but it'd be interesting to figure out. A few other places in this region, specifically Colorado and Utah. If you are a winter sports enthusiast, if you like skiing, if you like snowboarding, this Mountain West region is great for it because of the Rocky Mountains. Aspen, Colorado, regarded as one of the most famous ski and snowboarding resort cities in the United States. Lots of people go out there in the wintertime for tourism and to do those sorts of things if you really are into those winter sports. State of Idaho produces more potatoes than any state in the United States. Now, we here in Montcalm County, we produce a lot of potatoes as well. Different farming families in the Stanton-Sheridan area. Edmore actually has a potato festival. That is their town festival, like Sheridan Memorial Day Fest or Stanton Old Fashioned Days. Literally, Edmore is the potato festival. But even Edmore is outshined by the state of Idaho. So chances are, if you are buying potatoes, like actual potatoes, not just ones in bags, but even the ones that are your Ore-Idas or your store-bought bag stuff, chances are, if they're not from Montcalm County, they very well might be from Idaho. Grand Canyon is also located in this region, specifically in Arizona, one of the more beautiful parts of our country. Of course, the huge gorge and then the Colorado River that flows through it. I've never actually been to the Grand Canyon, so that's a bucket list thing for me, something I'd love to check out. But if you do a quick Google search or Google image search for the Grand Canyon, you'll see some absolutely gorgeous pictures of a really cool and unique part of the United States in our geography. One last thing for you, and it's nothing you need to take notes on. It's just kind of a for fun thing. I have went to the Mountain West region before. My buddy and I, when we were in college, actually drove from Stanton, Michigan, all the way out to the West Coast, to the Pacific West, which is going to be the unit we talk about in our next unit. But we definitely stopped some places in the Mountain West region. We were in Denver, we were in Las Vegas, and we also stopped to take this picture in Utah. So that is a 21-year-old Mr. Bazem and what I looked like many, many moons ago. You can see I had just as much, if not more, hair back then. I actually weighed more than I do now, which I guess that's kind of a good thing. I've lost weight since college. Not necessarily a lot of people can say that. But here's my buddy here, and we just stopped to take this picture in Utah. Utah is a very rocky and red state, and you can kind of see the geography. Kind of looks like a desert, but just a very desolate, meaning an area where you don't see a whole lot of people living. And so a really fun trip. And so if you ever get to have the experience to head out west or to head to some of these places we talk about, I think you'd enjoy it and find it to be interesting. If you have questions, excuse me, please make sure you're messaging me. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.